Good morning, everyone. My name is Simon Hamilton. I'm the Chief Executive of Belfast Chamber, and you're all very welcome to this morning's event. This is the latest in our Belfast Talks business series, which is delivered in partnership with Ulster Bank. You're all very welcome to today's event. Today's event is entitled Building a Net Zero Belfast. I think you would have to have been living in a cave somewhere not to realise that the COP26 conference is on this week in Glasgow. And I think that anybody who has watched the coverage of it to date will be very much seized of the criticality of this moment in time as world leaders are meeting to hopefully decide and agree on some decisive action to address the challenge of climate change. Over the next hour, we're going to explore what is happening in Glasgow and what it means for people and businesses back here in Belfast. And we're also going to examine some really great examples of locally based businesses who are growing green jobs right here in our own region and helping to make our city more sustainable as well. We're going to do that with the help of Maria Diffley, who is co-founder at Sustain IQ, Aidan Donnelly, who's director at Smart Work Plus, and Nicola Allen, who is head of corporate responsibility at Shoesmiths. I mentioned earlier that the series of events is sponsored by Ulster Bank. I'm very pleased that we have John Ferris, who is Regional Ecosystem Manager for the Ulster Bank Accelerator Programme, who is with us this morning to say a word of welcome. Over to you, John.
Morning, thanks, Simon, and thanks to everybody at the Chamber team for inviting us along today. As principal sponsors of COP26, Ulster Bank and our parent company, NatWest Group, are delighted to be involved with the Belfast Talks business series, especially today during COP, and that focus on how we can get Belfast to net zero. And I'm not going to talk for too long, Simon, as hopefully you'll be delighted to hear. But before I do hand back to you, I just want to do a quick shout out to around our climate accelerator. As a bank, we've committed to ensuring that at least 25% of the startups that we support across the UK are sustainable businesses. So that's 13 different accelerator programs, and at least 1 in 4 of those businesses are sustainable. So that's a huge thing for us, and that's a lot of support for businesses like Smart Work Plus that you'll hear from later on. It's all free. You don't have to have an Ulster Bank account to join us. And our current applications are open. So if you know someone who'd be interested, or you're interested yourself, please connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter. I'm pretty easy to find. So Simon, you'll be delighted the hard sell's over, and that's me done. Really excited to hear from everyone this morning, and back over to you.
John, thank you very much. I think that's a really great program, and the fact that so many of the businesses going through the accelerator are sustainable businesses. And as you say, we'll hear from some really great examples of those types of businesses later on. As John mentioned, Ulster Bank obviously are part of the NatWest Group. They're principal sponsor of COP26, which is taking place in Glasgow right now. Judith Cruikshank is originally from Northern Ireland, but she's also NatWest's climate sponsor for business banking. And I was able to speak to her earlier this week, just before she went off to COP26 in Glasgow, to hear about her role, her expectations for the conference, and what NatWest is doing to help its customers to become more sustainable. So Judith, you're the climate sponsor for business banking at NatWest Group. Maybe you could start off by telling us what does that role entail, and how exciting a role is that at this minute in time, whenever with COP26 just starting and NatWest being a sponsor of the conference?
Thanks, Simon. I mean, it's a hugely exciting role at the moment, as you say. Achieving net zero is crucial to the long-term success of our business customers, but also to our communities and the global economy. For me, I see business as a key enabler in tackling climate change, and our role in a bank of helping them is crucial, because we spend time with our businesses, day to day. We understand what they're facing into, and we can help them balance and understand the opportunities and the threats from climate change alongside everything else that they have to deal with. As a bank, obviously, as you said, we're principal sponsor of COP26. We want to work collaboratively with peers and stakeholders. We can't do everything in ourselves. We have a role to play, but so does everyone else, and that's where COP26 and activities like that come in, is we can use our role to really influence and help lobby for change on behalf of our business customers. For my personal role, it's really about how do we bring the central climate solutions that we're developing as a bank to our business customers, and spending time with those customers to understand the barriers that they face, and bringing that back into the solution development so that we get something that's fit for purpose.
Thank you. I think some of the things there you've touched on will be come on to again in a minute or two, but you're due to head off to Glasgow to the conference very soon. One of the privileged people who have been able to attend, and I think that there obviously have been conferences before recently in Paris and Copenhagen are some of the ones that stand in mind, but I don't think that there has been as much a sort of a sense of expectation. I think perhaps even the year's delay in the conference has probably heightened that sense of expectation. And you mentioned achieving net zero. I think we're all, you would have to have been living in a cave not to have heard the Prime Minister or other world leaders or other figures like David Attenborough and others talking about the need to seize this opportunity. And whilst you're there as a sponsor with the bank, what is the sense that this is a critical moment, but also that it's a critical moment that is going to be seized by world leaders, and that the big steps that are required to achieve that goal are going to be realised in Glasgow and worked on in the years ahead?
I mean, I think there's a really mixed bag of feelings, if I'm honest, facing into this week. I mean, obviously, I'm hugely excited to be able to be in Glasgow this week with many of my customers and on behalf of many of my customers. But I think when you talk to people, whether in a business context or just, kind of the average person on the street, I think there's a real sense of fear, urgency, but also hope. As you said, I think the level of the climate challenge and the level of awareness around the climate challenge is huge now compared to what it used to be. I think if you'd asked, several years ago at, previous COP events, if you'd asked somebody on the street, what do you think is going to come out of COP? They would have said, what are you talking about? Now when I finish my day's work focusing on climate, I then go and help my children with their homework, and they're talking about what they can do to help, reduce their carbon emissions and what they expect to come out of COP26. So, a huge increase in the awareness that we have. But with that, again, becomes a greater level of scrutiny and skepticism. I think when you see things like last week with reports of governments lobbying to protect their economic interests over those of the climate, it's easy for people to feel skeptical and feel worried, that no change will come out of it. I like to look on the glass half full side and feel a bit more positive. To me, the most important thing that can come out of COP26 is the action that comes out of any agreements, or even outside of those agreements. It's not the agreements in and of themselves. And I think an event like COP26, and particularly as I look at what's lined up for Glasgow over the next couple of weeks, really brings together businesses and stakeholders and people and funders who can have those conversations about what real action can we take to drive change. And I think we'll again raise that next level of awareness around what people are already doing and how people can get involved. And with that increased awareness then drives even greater demand for change. So when I look at it from that perspective, I feel hopeful that we will see change coming out of the back of it.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think mixed bag's a good way to describe it, but I think that there is the issue of climate change has been around for a long time, and I don't think that there has been a period where there has been such a focus on it, and that there's a growing awareness across society of the impacts of locally and internationally of not taking the actions that are required. So we hope that kind of scale of the challenge of climate change is matched by the scale of the ambition, and indeed I think the action, I think that's a very important focus.
I mean, the reality is we have to act now, right? We can't wait around for the next one. We can't spend our time talking about it anymore. We have to take action.
And just in terms of, some people might think it a bit peculiar for a bank to be so heavily involved in COP26, to be sponsoring it, to take it as seriously as you are. So, and perhaps some understandably you see when it comes to carbon emissions, the businesses have broadly historically been part of the problem rather than part of the solution. And in your role as climate sponsor for business banking at NatWest, have you seen a significant change in the attitude of customers and businesses that you're working with, and a desire to not just do their bit, but to make a really positive contribution to achieving net zero?
Absolutely. I mean, I firmly believe that businesses are a key part of the solution. You know, I absolutely take your point that when you look at where the emissions come from, clearly businesses are part of the problem on that, but they're absolutely the key to the solution. So I look after small and medium businesses, and SMEs in the UK are accountable for about 30% of carbon emissions directly. But they've actually got the ability to drive reduction in a significantly higher amount than that through the role that they play in the supply chains to the larger companies, but also in helping influence you know, consumer behaviour and consumer activities. What we see is, you know, businesses across the whole range of the spectrum. So we see, you know, we talk to customers who are still in the climate denying camp, all the way through to businesses that are truly kind of green champions and do, you know, really focus on developing solutions for climate change. The challenges that businesses have faced into over the last 18 months and continue to face into can make it very hard for them to prioritise taking climate action. You know, you look at the impacts of COVID and continuing impacts of COVID, of Brexit. You know, we talk to customers every day about, you know, supply chain issues that they've got, cost of solutions, staff shortages, can make it very hard to put climate change at the top. And the work that we've done recently to launch a Springboard to Sustainable Recovery report has really focused on how to help businesses look at the opportunity and the commercial opportunity that can come from taking action on climate change. Because to me, if we can find those win-win solutions, that's where we'll really start to see momentum. And so whether it's in helping customers reduce their costs by taking climate action, or whether it's in securing their place in the supply chain, you know, creating access to new markets or making themselves more attractive to consumers, we really believe there is a commercial opportunity, and we're seeing, you know, more and more of our customers taking action, you know, in that direction. So whether it is just by switching their electricity provider to a renewable source, insulating their properties better so that it reduces their cost of energy, switching to electric vehicles, looking at how they can reduce their packaging. You know, we're seeing examples come out across all of our different industries in the actions that customers take. And you know, our relationship managers throughout, many of them were reluctant to talk to customers at the start because they thought, well, you know, it's not a climate focused business, it's a retailer or it's a farm, what are they going to do? They won't know what to do. And actually, in many cases, the businesses are already really bringing the question to us and starting to take action.
Yeah, and something that we're going to focus on later during this event is how businesses based right here in Belfast aren't just doing what they can to be more sustainable, you know, taking some of those steps that you're talking about, but they're actually growing green businesses and they're creating green jobs. And is that something that NatWest as a bank is seeing right across the UK? And what assessments have you as a bank done of the opportunities that there might be for our economy? Because again, it's very often seen as quite a binary choice between, you know, doing away with industries and losing jobs, but there's actually the potential to create a significant number of jobs and to potentially grow our economy if we make that switch.
Yeah, and we're seeing significant momentum in that space. So last year we've got accelerator hubs across the UK where we help you know, foster startups. We've got one in Belfast, and I think we've got two of the customers on the podcast today. But we guaranteed that at least 25% of the spaces in those accelerators would be for green focused businesses. And you know, we're really seeing some, you know, brilliant ideas of businesses coming through who are focused on that. But again, in the report I referred to earlier, the Springboard to Sustainable Recovery, one of the areas we focused in on was the ability to create jobs. And you know, we saw just from opportunities like the retrofitting of buildings across the UK or electrification of the transport industry, you know, we see the opportunity to create about 130,000 jobs within the SME space. So, you know, that's in installing heat pumps, you know, retrofitting insulation buildings, helping drive the transition to renewable power, where we'll need to create a lot more capacity over the next years, you know, installing charging points. but also creating solutions for charging points where people don't have driveways, and how are we going to solve for that. So I think there's a significant opportunity to create jobs through the transition to net zero, and it really is that, you know, how do we, in a time where we're coming out of sort of COVID and facing Brexit, how do we create, you know, the right platform for business going forward?
And can I just maybe go back to one of the, maybe delving a little deeper into one of the points you made earlier. Belfast Chamber recently conducted a survey with alongside local consultancy firm BDO and that showed that, I think encouragingly, there was quite a high level of awareness and a growing sense of the dangers and the challenges that climate change and sustainability were presenting for businesses here in the city. A bit of a downside in terms of preparedness beyond some of those, let's call them maybe relatively more straightforward and simple steps like reducing waste or on electricity and energy. There wasn't as much in terms of, you know, setting carbon reduction targets or, you know, looking at the risks of flooding or extreme heat or things like that. And SMEs, and that's, the Belfast economy is like right across the UK made up of micro and small, medium-sized businesses, and they were also struggling to find the time and the resource within their business because of those other challenges that you mentioned, like Brexit and the pandemic. And that was inhibiting their ability to go out and seek the right advice. And whenever some of them did, they didn't quite know where to go. You've mentioned how the bank has been trying to help in that. Maybe talk a little bit more about that as well. But, you know, how do you think that we can help this big section of the Belfast economy to do the right thing? And what's the role of places like Belfast City Hall or Stormont or government nationally to have that sort of one single point of contact with good, sound, solid advice to allow those small businesses with a few people working in them to take a couple of steps, which when you add them all up can make a massive difference?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. When we talk to customers, we see the biggest challenge being that point from, you know, identifying the problem, being aware of the problem, but actually moving to taking action. And that's why, you know, you asked earlier about, you know, why are we sponsoring COP26? What's the role of the bank? I think there's a huge role for organisations like yourselves and ourselves to play in bringing together that network to help businesses move to a point of action. I think there are 4 key things that we can do to help businesses in that space. So the first one, which you touched on, is helping make sure that we get knowledge easily accessible to customers. I mean, there's so much climate knowledge out there now that it's very easy to become quickly overwhelmed by it. And as you say, you know, businesses don't have the time to sift through all of that information and find, you know, the nugget in there that's, you know, really applicable to them and going to help them take action. And I think we can help do that. So we've been working hard to make, you know, the knowledge that we've got access to, either ourselves or through partnerships that we have with the University of Edinburgh, to make bite-sized video clips available to businesses through our Business Builder Hub. But also looking at how, you know, so we bring customers onto our accelerator programs. We've got, you know, we've been doing podcasts. So we had the Green Builder podcast recently. We also had a partnership with the Best of Belfast podcast, which again started to just bring some of that knowledge. People learn in different ways. So whether they can listen to something in the car on the way home from work, or, you know, they can sit down and watch a video of something in the evening. It's that, how do you get the right content to people that's relevant, but also in a way that's, you know, manageable for them to access. The second piece for me is really about sharing experience, and it's that bringing across the network. So, you know, in organisations like yours or like ours, we have the, you know, the luxury of talking to lots of customers across lots of different industries. And I think one of the biggest things we can do is bring those customers together. So very often, you know, it's either about bringing people together so they can do more, you know, because they form a part of the supply chain, or it's just bringing like businesses together so people can say, oh, well, my business is a bit like that and they've done that, I could do it. Or it sparks an idea about how they might use a product that they have differently. And we've got local climate networks that we're starting to build as part of our SME task force work across the UK, and you know, really trying to bring businesses together and identify opportunities where we can put people in touch with each other. The third thing for me is about providing solutions, and funding being one of those key solutions. So 80% of our customers would say that access to funding is the greatest barrier from plan to action. And I think, there's a number of things that we can do. Obviously, as a bank, we have access to funding, but as a broader network of organizations, it's also about, helping businesses navigate the many grants that are available out there that they could use to help them, or helping lobby, governments for, more incentives or grants that we know will reduce the barriers to businesses taking action. From our perspective, from a funding perspective, we recently committed to making £100 billion worth of funding available to support the transition between now and 2025. We're actively exploring at the moment what the shape of those green loans will look like, particularly for small and medium businesses, so that we can provide discounted access to funding for customers. And the other piece is then where we can form partnerships, again, coming back to that network effect. So, for example, we partner with Octopus Energy to look at how we can provide discounts on electric vehicle charging points, but really, again, exploring how can we reduce the cost of action to customers. And then finally, I think the most important thing we can do is listen, and listen to enough of our customers about what really are the barriers that they're facing, and making sure we really understand. It's always easy sometimes to sit outside and go, oh, if you just did this or if you just did that, but really understanding the barriers and then figuring out how, who is the person to reduce those barriers? Is it government? Is it, is it the banks? Is it other businesses? And then how do we work together to deliver those solutions?
I think there are some really good points there, and I think that it doesn't matter whether we're governments or banks or business organizations like Belfast Chamber, but if we follow those 4 steps, I think we'll do well, and we will be able to make that contribution that we all individually and collectively need to make. So Judith Crookshank, can I thank you for your time, and I wish you all the very best as you head off to Glasgow, and hope you do not just enjoy that, but also find it very useful and can make an important contribution when you're there. Judith, thank you very much.
Thank you, Simon.
Okay. Hopefully everybody found that useful. There was a lot there, and I'm sure we'll explore some of the points that Judith raised later in the event. But we at Belfast Chamber and Ulster Bank, our sponsors, are exactly the same, like to use this opportunity of these events to shine a spotlight and showcase some of the really great talent, some of the really great businesses that are operating in Belfast today. So we're going to do that, as I said earlier, with the help of some business leaders. First of all, I'm going to call on Aidan Donnelly. Aidan is a director of a business called Smart Work Plus, a business that uses technology to gain better insights into how buildings are performing. So I'm going to hand over to Aidan, who has a short presentation that he's going to share with us to show a little bit more about Smart Work Plus. Aidan.
Thanks, Simon. Good morning, everybody. I'm just going to share my screen now and just share, don't worry, it's a short presentation that I'll share. Here we go. So my name is Aidan Donnelly, and I am CEO of Smart Work Plus. We're on the Ulster Bank Accelerator Programme, and we've been working with these guys for a few months now. It's, as John says, it's been a very useful programme for us. The challenge we're working on is that globally, building occupancy is typically about 60%. Now, that's from 2015, so these are pre-COVID numbers, where typically commercial buildings are only utilised 60% of the time. During lockdown, that went down to about 10%, and it's now back up to about 45 to 50%. So in real terms, it means companies are currently paying for rent, furnishing, heat, light, and cleaning spaces that they don't need. Now, from a climate perspective, commercial buildings generate 20% of global CO2, which by simple maths means that 50% of that, so 10% of global CO2, is being generated for no good reason. Now, modern buildings are being constructed using modern construction methods. They're using modern materials. They've got an eye towards sustainability and the environment. And those buildings are being made to be energy efficient, and they're being made with the right technology to make sure that efficiency is at the key of what they're doing. Well, we have a problem, though, where 2/3 of current building stock is still going to be with us in 2040. which means that there needs to be something done. Judith alluded to it earlier. There needs to be something done to retrofit existing buildings to make them more energy efficient. Now, when we first looked at this, we weren't looking at it from a climate perspective. We have in our team, we've got 35 years worth of facilities management experience, and we've got 25 years of IT and communication networking experience. So our first way of addressing this challenge was to see how we could apply our technical skills to facilities management. So in other words, facilities management companies are currently assuming that buildings are 100% occupied. And when they clean the space, when they apply security to the space, they're assuming that there's people in the space. So we're looking at ways that we can actually use sensors to detect where people are moving through buildings. So in other words, only clean where needed and only focused resources where needed. Now, there's another real opportunity here for building owners, the real meat and the bone, so to speak, in that building cost per full-time employee is anywhere from £3,000 to £10,000 per year. Now, it's quite a big range, that, but £3,000 comes from our own Northern Ireland public sector. They estimate £3,000 to £4,000 per person per year is what it's costing them. London's probably around about £10,000 a year. So if we can give information to building owners that allows them to reduce their footprint, they can make significant cost savings. Without even looking at carbon yet, they're making significant cost savings. What we've also found is that people who run buildings may have an idea of where they're using energy, but not where they're wasting it. So what we're looking at is ways that we can actually overlay information where they're using information on heat and light, where they're heating and lighting spaces that aren't actually being used by people. So the way we're doing that is we are working with IoT-enabled environment sensors. So IoT being the Internet of Things, so everything's cloud connected. Now, our main focus on this is building utilization. Now, there's two terms here that we use interchangeably, which is building occupancy and building utilization. Occupancy implies that we're watching people and watching what they're doing, and we care who they are, and we care how many of them are. That's not the case with us. We're looking at how space is being utilized. So we're looking at the actual footprint of a building, and if there's a person or 10 people in that space, regardless of the number, that space needs to be cleaned, it needs to be heated, it needs to be lit. So we're looking at building utilization, and our sensors can give us that information. The sensors will also tell us the ambient temperature of the room and whether the room's being heated and whether the lights are on in that room. Now, we address the issue of the current legacy estate because the sensors that we use are suitable for retrofit and very easy to retrofit. A lot of them are wireless. So there's no real impact on the fabric of the customer's building. We also full compatibility with existing sensors. So if we come across a scenario where a company has already got some sort of sensors in their building, we can work with that and we can enhance that. So what we've done is we've created a cloud-based analytics dashboard where we give all this information to the customer. We put the information in the customer's hands. From a facilities management perspective, from a cleaning perspective, we've taken it a step further where we use all the typical metrics that a facilities management company will use, like floor plan size, the KPIs that they operate to, the productivity rates they use. And we use the information from our sensors to create a dynamic cleaning schedule directly into the hands of the cleaning operatives. It may not sound like it's important, but one site locally spends £1.5 million per year cleaning all the buildings across their site. We can give that customer return on investment within 18 months, just on cleaning. Taking it to the next level, we can then give that customer an overlay of where they're wasting energy on heat and light, where nobody's actually in the space. So we're giving them more power to be able to make intelligent decisions and informed decisions. We can also give them a building heat map. Now, a building heat map is a very visual tool, and it's nice to look at because you can see hotspots, you can see high traffic and low traffic areas, but we can take it to a granular level where we can actually give them metrics which will tell them over a week, month, quarter, year, or even over the period of your entire lease, how much of your building have you used and how much do you actually need? So what's the peak occupancy in your building? And if you look at the metrics that are there at the minute, 50% of buildings are currently being used because people are on leave, they're working from home, they could be working from a different department or different building. So they're not always using the space. So for us to be able to give them metrics that when they come to the end of a lease to look at renewing or moving to a new building, we can tell them exactly what size of building they need. So in summary, again, we focused on this mainly from a cost saving perspective when we first looked at it, but there's climate benefits from what we're doing as well. So to reduce someone's cleaning costs, we're reducing the waste and chemical usage that they're outputting. We can reduce their energy spend, and they'll see that reflected in the energy bill straight away. But probably the biggest thing that we can do for a company is to help them make smarter use of a smaller real estate footprint, which is up to 40% reduction, which will make a massive impact on the carbon emissions across the world. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time.
Aidan, thank you very much. That was fascinating. And again, we'll come back to you with a few questions towards the end. And indeed, if anybody has any questions for Aidan or anything to hear from Maria after, please use the question and answer function, which is at the bottom of your page, and we'll put those questions to the guys later on. So thanks again, Aidan. See you shortly. I'm now going to hand over to Maria Diffley. Maria is a co-founder of a brilliant business based here in Belfast called Sustain IQ, and they have a platform which helps to transform how organizations manage their sustainable performance. So Maria, I'm going to hand over to you to tell us a little bit more about Sustain IQ. Thank you.
Brilliant, thanks. Good morning, everybody. I'm delighted to be here today to join in the conversation here at Belfast. And with COP26 in full swing across the pond, there is an ever-growing reality change impacts we're facing if we do not limit net global temperatures to 1.5 degrees. Something about, and in fact, the first global scientists were warning of its impacts in the 1820s. Why haven't we done more about it until now? And I truly believe that up until recent years, well, it doesn't really affect us over here in the West, but globalization and a reliance far beyond our own shores have led us to look at how climate change will affect society and business. In business especially, it has become abundantly obvious that we're about to pay considerable carbon taxes in the not so distant future. And even as late as yesterday, with the Treasury announcing that they expect companies to report on their carbon reduction plans towards net zero. So there are very commercial, a lot of very strong commercial drivers also in place, pushing us all to be net zero. Climate change is, of course, a global problem, and as such will need a concerted effort between industry, business, government and the public. And really and truly, this is one race that we cannot afford to lose. So businesses, having been at the core of an industrial revolution and a large emitter of CO2, have a lot to be responsible for in terms of the road to net zero. But many businesses struggle to understand their impacts right here and now, not to mind setting targets which will help them to reduce their emissions. That's why at Sustain IQ, we genuinely believe that data is key. You must understand your baselines and monitor progress to show the business case for investments into becoming net zero. The Climate Change Committee did three things if we are to meet our net zero targets. That's collective action, behavioural change, and of course, tech. And I'd like to just take a few minutes to tell you a wee bit about the tech innovations at Sustain IQ and how we're helping businesses to try to reach their net zero targets. We at Sustain IQ set out to demystify sustainability for businesses by building an easy-to-use platform which helps them to monitor, measure and report on their ESG and sustainability performance. As a result, our clients are up to 20% more competitive on bid and tender submissions. They are saving around 30% on the time needed for reporting. They're compliant with a range of contractual and legislative clauses, and they're, of course, mitigating against the risks of climate change in their supply chain. We designed the product around 4 pillars, and with our clients entering data across all of these 4 pillars, they get a really holistic business intelligence on a range of ESG initiatives. So for instance, on pillar 1 there, responsible procurement, we capture the socio-economic impacts of their supply chain, of their subcontractors, and also we capture things like the amount of recycled material that they use, or the amount of certified timber, for instance. Pillar 2 is our environmental management pillar, and that captures waste, water, energy, biodiversity, and all your transport mileage and CO2 emissions relating to it. Pillar 3 really and truly focuses on the impacts you have on your own people. So we capture training, health and well-being, diversity and inclusion, apprenticeships and placements. And then finally, community engagement and partnering is all about your community impacts. So looking at what do you do with your charitable donations, volunteering, do you engage with local schools, and responsible leadership within your business. So you can see from those 4 pillars, we're really pulling together an integrated view of sustainability, not just your CO2 emissions. And so right across that, we're seeing the socioeconomic impacts of supply chains, your scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, and then also your social value of your operations. And we wanted to make it as hassle-free as possible for people to get this data into the system. So we have a number of different methods, from manual entry, bulk uploads. We're using QR codes on site now, and we also have a myriad of integrations with other software products that are already in existence. So we essentially then take this data and present it in a dashboard that allows companies to analyze their impacts across the entire operations, or to drill down into the impacts of particular sites. It is real time, and with consistent standardized methods of data capture, we're ensuring that we have accurate and reliable reporting. As well as the dashboard, then we create bespoke reporting libraries for each individual company, so that we're ensuring they can respond to bid or compliance requests at the touch of a button. It's all customizable as well, so depending on the themes that are in each individual company's strategy, and also in terms of their own branding, we can customize it for that. The exciting part for me of getting up every day and pushing Sustain IQ forward as a business is that I can see the difference that it makes to our customers every day. When companies see the difference that their ESG investments can make to their bottom line, to the economy, to the environment, and to their local communities, they tend to invest more, and of course their performance rises. One of the drivers for companies to engage in ESG reporting is that their staff and stakeholders now demand it. And we've seen a 12% increase in staff engagement in the area from simply communicating to staff via the infographics which we produce in Sustain IQ. I am obviously incredibly proud of all the companies that we have on board, especially our Northern Irish customers, who are 100% punching above their weight in terms of the UK, and their efforts to forge a pathway to net zero in their respective industries. As a business, we've been expanding rapidly. We're on over 600 sites across the UK and Ireland, but we always have the capacity for engaging with NI businesses who need some help in trying to figure out how to become net zero. The very simplest advice I can give today for anybody thinking about how they start this journey is to understand your impacts today so that you can drastically reduce them tomorrow. So if anybody would like to reach out for a further chat or a follow-up with me, you can reach me on my email there. There's lots more information on our website, and I of course look forward to any questions that you have now.
Maria, thank you very much. That was also brilliant. Also great to see that you guys are not just working locally, but also right across the UK and Ireland as well. So well done on that and the success that you're having. And then finally, at this point, we're very, very fortunate to be joined by Nicola Ellen. Nicola is the head of corporate responsibility at Shoesmiths. Anybody who doesn't know Shoesmiths, they are a major UK law firm. They now have a presence in Belfast. And we at Belfast Chamber are very proud of them in that they have, 2 Friday nights ago, they won the Green Champion Award at the 2021 Belfast Chamber Business Awards. So Nicola, well done to you and to the team at Shoesmiths for doing that. What I'd like to just explore with you is maybe you could tell us a little bit about what you have done as a business to become a recognized green champion, and why is it so important, the Shoesmiths? You're a law firm. It's a very different business to the ones that we've just showcased. So, why are you taking sustainability as serious as you are as a firm?
Yeah, it is key to Shoesmiths because it's part of what our vision and priorities are, and it has been for many, many years. This sort of trying to play a positive part in society, and that was resoundingly so still with the onset of the pandemic, not least the net zero strategy, which is one of a number of projects that I lead on. But we also advise clients in a number of areas, and it would seem strange, wouldn't it, if a firm was giving, for example, in our case, legal advice, and it wasn't being practiced by our own firm. So it's absolutely important that the two are aligned. I mean, we're doing an awful lot, and I'm sorry that I missed the beginning because we have a fortnightly progress call on the strategy. But I mean, sort of top line stuff that we're doing, we have an operational target to become net zero by 2025. So that was obviously part of the entry. That's for scopes 1 and 2, and we will be reviewing that as a result of the net zero standard being published by the Science Based Targets Initiative earlier this week. We've submitted proposed emission reduction targets to the SBTI. So we will be, I'll be able to talk about that in due course. I can't really say any more at the moment, but I'm really excited about what will happen next. And there's all sorts of things that go on within the firm. So sourcing renewable electricity from our offices. We are present in Belfast, but we are situated in 13 locations across England and Scotland. So we have a target to get to 100% renewable electricity by 2025, and we're about 74% at the moment. We have sort of various measures therefore in place as well in terms of energy efficiency. So we're planning permission permitting to install photovoltaic panels in our Lakes office in Northampton. We also have a procurement program where we ask suppliers to provide data on their carbon emissions, and if they are starting to set targets in this area, we measure and report on scopes 1, 2 and 3. So in terms of scope 3 emissions, that includes travel from home to work, so it's not business related, so it's people traveling to the office. We measure home working emissions, so I'm working from home at the moment, so I'm using energy with my laptop if I have my lights on and my heating on, so that's all factored in as well. 66% of our footprint comes from goods and services, so that's a big impact, and this is what firms are finding. Scopes 1 and 2, which are more manageable, are a small part of your total footprint. We're engaging and training staff. There's so much I could tell you that we're doing, but I'm conscious that I just had a few minutes to try and give you some highlights of our approach, but we are absolutely committed in this area. We see decarbonisation is absolutely critical, not just within our firm, but within our supply chain organisations that we work with. So it's really exciting, it's challenging, but I think there are certainly technological and behavioural opportunities out there, and I hope, and we will need to collaborate. We can't do all this alone.
Yeah,
so it's scary, but we have to. There's no alternative, is there, for all of us on this call? Any organisation, no matter how big or small or what sector they're in, we all have to play our part.
That's absolutely right, and I think that from what you're saying, just to summarize it, there's a huge amount of concerted, ongoing action by the firm as well. This is not something that you decided to do a couple of years ago.
No.
Put a couple of measures in place. It seems that you're building each year on a fairly regular basis, different things that you're doing, not forgetting about what you did before. So it's not something that's kind of just, well, we'll do that ticks a box, or it's good for appearances.
We're at the start of this. Yeah, I mean, one piece of work we're doing at the moment is reviewing our long-term strategy. So we've got the first target I mentioned up to 2025, but what's the business model beyond 2025? So we'll be looking at scenario analysis, understanding what strategically direction the business is going in. Obviously, the sort of conventional growth plans, but we're just thinking more strategically, what's the firm of the future going to look like, and therefore what do we need to do to address the challenges ahead, and looking at sadly different potential temperature changes that may or may not occur depending on how well the world is at tackling climate change. So yes, it's a big project.
No, thank you. Look, that's hugely fascinating stuff, and I know that you probably could go into a lot more detail, but we're limited by time. And if anybody wants, I can't stress enough how impressed we are with what Shoesmiths are doing as a firm. So well done on winning the award, and I'm sure that you might have pricked the interest of some people who are listening, and we can certainly connect people who want to learn from what you're doing. So thanks. Please stick around with us, Nicola, and we might come back to you for some other points. But I'm going to bring Maria and Aidan back in as well, just for just a bit of discussion just before we conclude. And I'll come to you first, Maria. And so Nicola is from a law firm. We saw some of the different businesses, different projects that you guys are working on. So you're working very closely with a range of different businesses across different sectors, and you're advising them on how they can get to net zero. Are you seeing any similar hurdles or barriers or difficulties facing businesses across those various sectors that sort of knit them together?
Yeah, definitely. Sector that people are in, there seems to be kind of a few similar barriers. So for instance, the lack of expertise, which was talked about earlier, I think there's a real fear around that, there is a lot of information out there, but it's trying to cut through that information for each. And that's what I think is terribly important for COP26. That we get real industry insights and pathways for each industry, and in each individual industry, who can we lean on for advice and expertise in that area. So that's the lack of expertise within organizations is one thing. The second thing is that I think people are quite overwhelmed within businesses as to where to start. And like I said, in my presentation, you just have to start somewhere, and the somewhere is figuring out where you're at today. So like I see quite a lot of companies in Northern Ireland and all over the world actually coming out with net zero target, publications and PR. And if you actually look behind it, do they actually know where they are today? Quite a lot of them do not. So you can't really make those, promises to reach a particular target, and commercially they don't understand what that's going to cost the business, or whether it makes sense, so that's the first thing, is that kind of being overwhelmed about it and just having to move on. And then I suppose also, with that lack of expertise, there is, and I think that's where government need to step in and fund or create funds to allow these companies to tap into expertise that they don't have. Because I mean, if you realistically, if you have to get a consultant in for a month to try to put together a carbon reduction plan or your net zero strategy, which could take longer than a month to get that information together, you're talking serious cash here. So I think that's one of the things. And then I suppose, look, definitely when I talk to people, they can tend to try and get a handle on scope 1 and 2 emissions, but like a lot of us, I guess, out there, scope 3 is still a bit fluffy, and we're not really sure how to get around that. So I'm hoping governments and industry come together to create really industries, especially because every business is different, and try to capture their scope 3 is a difficult task. So yeah.
Thanks, Maria. And Aidan, same question to you, and it's certainly something that we have found in the survey that I was mentioning earlier, that there's a lot of businesses are very aware, and if they're not aware, their staff are making them aware of the need to take action. But there's just that there's a lot of, when you think of the profile of businesses being very small, that issue around expertise and advice and where to go for it, feeling overwhelmed, as Maria mentioned, and then sort of all important around finance and funding. Are you finding similar issues? Obviously, your services is trying to, as you mentioned, primarily is to assist businesses to save money, which is a great incentive in itself, but it has that that, I don't want to call it a secondary benefit, but it has that other benefit of potentially, you know, contributing to saving the planet as well. So, you know, are you finding when you're interacting with customers that they're, you know, there is a nervousness or a difficulty, but, you know, that there's a more of an awareness than there was previously?
It's probably more of a panic than a nervousness because I talked for about 5 or 6 minutes there, but we have had scenarios where we've sat down with people and they've said, what do you do? And it's taken 2 hours. It's taken 2 hours to describe what we do and how we do it, because there's a number of different facets that we can affect in a person's business, a number of different ways that we can save them costs and reduce carbon. But we've been told specifically by facilities managers of very large businesses, do not give me any information that I have to action. I have too much going on my plate. Do something for me that happens automatically that I don't even have to touch and don't have to get involved with. So that's not even small businesses, that's the big ones. So for the small business owners, I always say to people, there's no shame in making money first and saving the environment second, because you have to make sure your business is still there next year before you can drive your business to net zero. If you're driving your business to net zero profit first, you're not going to be there to do anything of any benefit next year. And I think that's where most small business owners are, is they're thinking in their own heads, how do I keep my business alive next year? How do I make profit? How do we plan for a family holiday next year? And if you can offer them something whereby you're saving money on the bottom line and taking a responsibility away from them that they don't have to think about. If you're saving them money and then making the business more sustainable second, that helps a lot with their business planning.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. And another question for both of you, and maybe bring Nicola in on this one as well. But you know, how do you think that? So if your two businesses, Maria and Ian, are fairly new businesses. Nicola, the law firm, has started recently on its journey towards net zero. You know, so this is something that has been around for a long time, but there's a growing, not just awareness, but I think a growing amount of action, whether that's creating businesses to help other businesses or businesses taking steps internally. So Maria, maybe start with you, then go to Ian, and then come to you, Nicola. But you know, how well do you think that Belfast is placed, you know, from dealing with the businesses that you're seeing with your customers, your clients? How well placed are we at the moment on that journey to become a net zero city? And you know, how far do we have to go individually? How far do we have to go collectively to achieve that goal?
Yeah, I think traditionally, look, you might guess by my accent, I'm from the south of Ireland originally, and I've worked all over the globe, and landed here in Belfast about 10 years ago. And it's the reason I stayed is because I do actually think that for everything, Belfast is quite ahead of the curve naturally. Normally, we're a very innovative city here. So in terms of, like I said earlier, Climate Change Committee highlighted that tech, for instance, is going to be one of the main, you know, things to get us there. And we have an abundance of tech businesses here, and a great ecosystem, which, you know, the likes of the Ulster Bank startup programs as well, and Catalyst, and all of those are helping to build. So it's that driving green tech forward. And also, like, we have a climate commissioner now, you know what I mean? So you look towards government to see what they're actually doing here. Now, they could be doing more, don't get me wrong, but you know, I think we are ahead of the curve when we're talking. We have a climate commissioner. I know Belfast City Council are really pushing forward to try to align all of their climate goals right across their operations. So in terms of, like, you know, the ecosystem for business, for government, and also, you know, the people in Northern Ireland and in Belfast especially, there's a willingness there for that behavioural change. So I definitely think we're in a good place for it. Totally optimistic about targets being met. Maybe it's just that's the way I am, but I do believe we can get there if we all act together. You know, there has to be collective action for it, but I do think Belfast is well placed in that instance.
Thanks, Maria. And Ian, do you see a sort of a similar sea change happening in Belfast? And do you think that we're making good progress?
I think the attitude's there to make the change. I think working in the tech sector, I think what I would like to see is probably we have a huge public sector footprint here in Northern Ireland. And I think what I would like to see is the procurement process made a lot easier for new tech businesses to bring new ideas to the table, to be able to help the public sector. Because if the door was open there for people, and I'm not just talking people like myself, there's younger people coming to the table with good ideas that maybe don't have the business savvy or the procurement experience to be able to get in and talk to public sector or even big private sector companies. I think if that was streamlined a bit, we'd get there a lot quicker. Because there, as Maria says, there's a fantastic tech ecosystem happening here at the minute, and I think if we could get them in front of the right customers to make the biggest impact as quick as possible, I think that would be great.
Thanks, Aidan. And then Nicola, finally to you. You mentioned your clients earlier and working with, and I know you have a vast range of clients, many of whom are working in the energy and environmental space. But to what extent is what you're doing as a firm helping to drive what they're doing? Are they taking attention of what you're doing and vice versa? Is it a bit of you learning from your clients as well?
Absolutely, yes. So we're certainly providing legal advice, both to innovator organisations, but also where perhaps organisations perhaps not so familiar with the implications of decarbonisation, to be able to try and guide and steer them. I don't know whether I'm just getting a little bit long in the tooth, but I just feel climate change, it's clearly very top of agenda at the moment, as it would be with COP26 and all the terrifying reports that have been published. But I've been in my field a number of years, and we've seen it's all very cyclical, and something else will come along that will become the top issue. We absolutely have to maintain the momentum. We absolutely have to see delivery after COP26. There's so much riding, there's so much at stake. None of us, no sector, whether it's third sector, government, business, individuals, as consumers, and so on and so forth. So I want to be optimistic. I really do. Certainly the momentum is there at the moment. We need to maintain it. We need to escalate the pace of change, and we need systemic change. It's not incremental change. Time is not on our side.
Thank you. That's a really strong, really good message on which to end the discussion.
That's my personal view, by the way.
And I think you're right. And I think that I think one of the challenges, and I think that Ray hit on it earlier as well, is there's always something else that can distract someone, whether it's an individual business or governments or society.
I'm not saying they're not important. They all are. And of course, unfortunately, many of them are interrelated or can impact. If you address one issue, we'll address another. But no, we just need to be focused. We need to deliver on promises.
Yeah, and thank you, Nicola, and thank you to Maria and Aidan for not just what you're doing, but for showcasing your businesses today. I'm just going to finally go back to John Ferris from Ulster Bank, who is sitting by the wonders of technology, sitting alongside Aidan.
Here he is.
There he is. He just appeared. And John, I mean, some really good stuff there. Really good, a couple of really good, strong local businesses who are fast growing in this sector. I think one of the things that there's many things that tie Maria and Aidan's businesses together, and they're doing similar things, but it's the use of technology as well. So technology as a friend to help assist in combating climate change and making businesses more sustainable. And what you're doing, the 25% of businesses going through the accelerator having a sustainable angle, marrying technology with that it's clearly pretty key to helping us through what is, as Nicola was saying, an immense challenge that's before us all.
Yeah, and I think, Simon, one of the key challenges that I think everyone's alluded to this morning is the climate crisis is such a huge and vast thing that it's very difficult as a business and a person to understand how you make that impact and that difference. And as a bank, for us, it's not just about we announced a couple of weeks ago that we're going to put £100 billion aside over the next couple of years to fund sustainable and climate focused businesses. But it's not just about money. The reality is, as everyone's talked about, the education piece is really important as well, and alongside supporting entrepreneurs who are in that space, it's really key for us as a bank to actually support our customers to understand, as we've talked about earlier, about how you understand about your emissions and reducing them, which is why we've partnered with the likes of Microsoft to work on an AI platform that will hopefully pilot early next year to support a business to tell them how and how they can reduce their emissions when you don't really understand that. So I think as long as well as funding, it's really key that we also support people to get to that place and understanding that, if someone was to give me a climate test right now, I'm not sure I would pass, Simon, but I think everyone's in that same space, so we all need to accept that we're there, and rather than bury our heads in the sand, let's take some action and do something about it. Thanks, Sean. Thank you. And can I just then just finally then just thank everyone? Can I thank Judith Cruikshanks for her time, Judith from NatWest for taking the time out to share her thoughts earlier. Can I thank Aidan, Maria and Nicola for profiling and showcasing what they are doing within their businesses. So thank you for your time this morning. John, can I thank you and Ulster Bank for your ongoing support for our Belfast Talks business series. Can I thank Sarah and the team at Planned for making everything run so smoothly this morning. What was a pretty packed agenda. Can I encourage you to go to our website, belfastchamber.com. There are a range of different events that we're hosting over the next number of weeks, including one if you're interested in this theme. There's one on growing a green city, where we are talking with the Vice Mayor of Oslo about the transformation of the Norwegian city into a European green capital, and that's next Wednesday, 10th of November at 10 a.m. So please go along and register for that. Thank you. And then just finally, just thank everybody for coming along this morning. I hope you found that useful and interesting. I look forward to seeing you again very soon at another Belfast Chamber event. Thank you.